Now, I cannot recall when I was ever really content with how I looked. I thought I was ugly when I was a teenager because guys weren't really much interested in me at all. They always went for the pretty girls. I had features that weren't considered attractive in the 80s and 90s. I had a plethora of pimples and blackheads. My skin was as white as a sheet of paper. I never would tan. You would never catch me wearing shorts or a swimsuit. But then in my 20s, I would look back on pictures of myself and I would say, what was I thinking? Because I would give anything to look like that now. I said that when I was in my 20s. Keep that in mind. Because this thought became repetitive throughout my entire life. I mean, of course, it didn't help that, I had one ex-boyfriend that told someone that I had ugly feet. So I went through my whole life self-conscious about the way my feet looked. So you would never see me wearing open-toed anything, sandals, nothing. I would not. And actually, I didn't start doing that in probably in the last 10 years. And then I was also in a long-term relationship, an abusive relationship, with a guy who often called me ugly and called me a lot of vulgar names that I won't repeat here. But of course, these kinds of situations, these experiences, they tend to haunt you for the rest of your life. They follow you no matter where you go into adulthood. But then in my 30s, I look back on pictures of me in my 20s, and once again, that question reared its ugly head. How could I have not loved myself? How could I have not thought that I was attractive? And you would think that I would learn my lesson by my 30s, and it just continued to go from there. In my 30s, I had terrible teeth. I even had one missing front tooth that I had to have pulled because I didn't have the money to fix it or have it replaced. So I just had it pulled. So I'm walking around with a front tooth missing. And, in those days when you have a front tooth missing, no matter who you are or what you've done or what you haven't done, you're considered like a meth head or a crackhead or something. And I've never in my life touched drugs, ever in my entire life. But I went through my adult years with terrible teeth. But I did eventually afford dentures, and then I eventually afforded to be able to have implants. So I have a full set of teeth now. But, it didn't really change my outlook on how I looked and how I would be. I still couldn't love myself and appreciate myself. I was still self-conscious. I was still afraid to smile. And I'm not gonna lie, even by this time I was still kind of ashamed of my pale skin and my bad, my pale color, my pale complexion, and the bad skin on my face, because I've always had bad skin, large pores and pimples and all that stuff that isn't accepted in society. But then by the time I was in my 40s and I met my husband, things did start looking up for me. Even slightly before I met him, I did start to accept myself more and love myself more, but not really enough that I wasn't self-conscious, because I was still down on how I looked, and my husband changed that a lot when we met. But I never could quite shake my self-hatred. I brought that baggage with me from my teenage years all the way into my 40s. And I just, no matter what my husband said, he would tell me on a daily basis that I was beautiful, and he didn't seem to care, how I dressed or about all these things that I used to just obsess over, and he didn't care. And but it didn't change my mind about myself. It didn't really occur to me that he genuinely loved me and loved everything about me, and that I could stop hiding behind this huge wall that I had been building up around myself for over 30 years. I still was not happy with myself, and I constantly tried to fix it all the time. Now, I'm almost 50 years old. I will be 50 next year. And I'm not 49 yet. I'll be 49 at the end of this year, but I'm almost 50. And I can still look back on old photos of myself. And I just get really sad because I wasted my whole life just not being appreciative of what God gave me. It makes me a little sad to see what a nice figure I had, and my long pretty hair, and people would compliment my eyes and things like that, and I just never appreciated it. I never saw it for what it is. I never saw what other people saw, and I appreciate it now, and it saddens me because now I'm realizing that I'm getting older. I'm starting to lose all of that, the beauty, the younger beauty, and it might seem a little conceited to say I think I had beauty, but I think we all do. I'm not just saying I was beautiful and this person is beautiful or that person. I'm saying we all of us as women are beautiful in different ways, in our own ways, and we just have this problem with accepting it and to realizing it because we're constantly trying to look like somebody else or trying to fix what God created. But I'm going to point out some things, like my side profile, my unattractive side profile. I don't want to show it too much because it still makes me a little self-conscious, but it's always been there, but now it's getting worse. I have a little spare tire around my midsection now that I never really had before, and for some strange reason, I consistently thought that I was overweight, and I was only 135 pounds for most of my adult life. And I'm definitely not 135 pounds anymore. So I don't know what I was complaining about. And my legs are losing their elasticity and even showing signs of cellulite. So yeah, I'm a little freaked out. Now, I remember an episode of The Golden Girls where the three of them, Dorothy, Blanche, and Rose, wanted to join a gym. And they were at the front desk, and the lady behind the desk, she's like this, really skinny, tall, beautiful young woman, and she was trying to sell them leg warmers, or trying to sell them all this stuff for their first session at the gym. And at first they kind of rejected the leg warmers, and the lady asked them, "You need something to keep your thighs warm. What are you using now?" And Dorothy answered in the most relatable way ever, "Friction. That's why we're here." I used to laugh out loud so hard at that episode. I still laugh at those episodes. All of the episodes are hilarious to me. But now when I watch that episode, my laughter is accompanied by a dismal nod of agreement. Like the skin under my arms jiggles if I move, so I'm a little embarrassed to wear short sleeves. I still wear them, but I just don't like it. I'm very conscious of it. And I have a lot of sun damage on my arms and my face and this area. I don't know what it's called, but it's probably from all those times when I was a teenager and I tried desperately to get a tan because it was the in thing. If you had pale white skin, it was considered ugly, and I tried so hard to tan, but I just didn't tan. It was not meant for me. I have a bulging vein in one of my legs, and my ankles are puffy. My hands have aged further along than the rest of my body, and the pores in my face are more like chasms. So yeah, I got a lot of stuff going on here that I'm not, too comfortable with. And then on top of all of the things that I had no control over, I've done things to my body that I wish I hadn't. I have a bunch of random, poorly done tattoos that I did myself when I was a teenager. And then, I know I mentioned this in a couple other videos before, but I also have a gigantic tattoo on my left thigh, the size of Florida. Not the shape of Florida, but the size of Florida. And I just really regret marking the body that God gifted me with on some ridiculous quest to be someone else or to look a different way. I feel dirty, ashamed, and guilty for what I've done to my body. And there's nothing I can do to take it back. Now, but why do I care so much about the things that I had no control over? Why does it make me sad to see how I once looked versus how I look now? Why can I never be happy with myself in the moment? And why do so many of us tend to do this? Because that's what the enemy wants. He wants us to waste our short, precious lives hating ourselves, inside and outside, if he can get away with it, which he typically can, unfortunately. He never wants us to love or have respect for ourselves, because that only makes us more appreciative of what God gave us. If we think we're unattractive and unlovable, we become desperate to fix God's mistakes, the things that we hate about ourselves. And we can't focus on God. We can't give our time and attention to God because we're too busy trying to fix his mistakes. And some of us become desperate to find love, so desperate that we lower our standards and we give ourselves to people who have no respect for us whatsoever and never will. We give ourselves away physically and emotionally to anybody who shows the slightest interest in us. We lower our defenses and end up in the lion's mouth. The enemy, he never wants us to focus on Jesus Christ. When we're unhappy with our bodies, our faces, and our lives, we spend our lives trying to, like I said before, fix God's mistakes, his so-called mistakes. And we never have time to praise or worship him. And why would we? Because he made us this way. But when are we going to wake up? When will we look at ourselves in the mirror and smile rather than frown? When are we going to love what God blessed us with and stop sulking over what we were never meant to be and the things we were never meant to have? And when will we embrace aging instead of trying to defeat it? By getting plastic surgery and Botox injections and packing so much makeup on our faces that we just don't look like ourselves anymore. The fake eyelashes, the elaborate eyebrows. Some people go so far as to tattoo their eyebrows on and to tattoo their lipstick on and to put needles in their lips to make their lips bigger. I don't understand why people are so desperate to be pretty that they would put their bodies through such harm and such traumatic injury. Some of us hate our lives so much that we have drastic, life-altering surgeries to change our identities. But I am finally awake after 48 years. I never really knew how freeing this could feel, being unconcerned with how the world sees me and content with how God sees me. I wish I could just reach back in time and shake my younger self in my teens, in my 20s, and my 30s, and just tell her how hard the enemy is working to make her hate herself. I wish I could do that. I know it sounds cliche, but it is so true that we are all beautiful how God made us. The enemy is a liar. He's lying to us, telling us this is wrong, this looks bad, this isn't acceptable, you can do better than that, you can be prettier, you can have more. It's got to stop. There is nothing wrong with your nose. Your chest size is perfect. You don't need to inject needles in your face. And if you do, listen to me, you're going to look pretty terrible later. Just look at celebrities. The proof is right there. Just look at them before you go to do something so drastic to yourself. Just for a little short time of satisfaction. And a ton of makeup isn't going to make you beautiful either. It's just going to make you different. And that little spare tire around your belly, trust me, it's cute. And you don't need to be a member of the high eyebrow club or the fake eyelashes guild. It's ridiculous. And you are going to regret that tattoo because it is a smudge on a beautiful painting. That's all it is. You may like it in the beginning, may think it's cool, you want to show it off, but you're going to hate it later. It's going to look bad later too. The older you get, the color fades, The skin around it begins to sag and wrinkle and shrivel up, and it just looks like a big blob of color on your skin. Now, of course, we should always do things that better our health and to do things to stay healthy and fit. But anything beyond that is usually a waste of time, a waste of money. Anything beyond that rarely needs fixing. It really doesn't. It is all in our heads, and it is time that we banish the negative thoughts of the enemy, the lies that he tells us about ourselves. It's time that we start loving ourselves, being confident in our skin. It's also more attractive when someone is confident. And I don't mean confident in a conceited way, or there's a lot of women who come off as confident, but really it's the opposite. They're just trying to cover what they really feel inside up by being aggressive or conceited. But confidence, you can really tell a woman who is confident in her skin because she's kind. She doesn't let society dictate how she looks, how she lives her life. She is gentle spoken, and she exudes confidence in a way that nobody else can. Even the people who fake it, she's different, and it shows. People know it, people see it. But we really need to start putting all of our time and effort into our families, into our husbands, into our children, and into God, and into whatever purpose that God has for our life, or our purpose in his plan for our life. That is what we need to be focusing on, not how the world sees us, not how society portrays us, what's acceptable in society. We got to stop doing that because none of that matters. It doesn't matter now, even though it seems like it does, because we're being lied to. And it's definitely not going to matter later when you get older or after you die. It definitely will not matter then. Just imagine how far along we can be in our purpose if we spent half the time on our purpose that we spend trying to fix God's so-called mistakes, trying to please the world and be what society deems acceptable. How much could we have already accomplished? It's amazing to think about that. But the question really boils down to, how can we trust the plan that God has for our lives if we can't even trust the bodies and personalities that he gave us, that he blessed us with? We have to get over that hurdle before we can make any progress. So the question is, are you going to continue to cater to the world or do what God placed you here for? Thank you for watching. May God bless you, your family, and your life.